The snow den had never returned a prisoner warm. Torches in Frosthollow's yard faced the iron mouth beneath the wall. The pack did not come to jeer. They came to listen for the curse bells sewn into Tressa Haleward's gray shift. While she breathed, the 7 silver pieces chimed. When they stopped, the guards would record that winter had accepted its due. High Priestess Modron Kest stood on the upper stair, hands folded over her white staff. Tressa Haleward, last daughter of the house that brought forbidden frost into our borders, you are condemned for waking death. Cold inside the royal granaries. Tressa's bare feet had gone numb against the stone. She raised her head. The grain froze because the heat tithe was removed from the southern storehouse. A murmur passed through the stewards. Recognition. Quickly buried. Modron remained composed. The royal measures were inspected. By your temple. By servants of winter law. Then let the law show its ledgers. A cursed woman does not summon records against the crown. Tressa looked toward the throne platform. Alpha King Bastian Morcant had arrived without heralds. Snow clung to the black fur at his shoulders. He was feared less for his crown than for the silence of his wolf. For 3 winters, no one had heard the king shift beneath the full moon. His eyes settled on the pale mark below Tressa's collarbone. It resembled a broken ring. His right hand closed against his ribs. Modron noticed. Tressa noticed her noticing. Bastian descended 1 step. Who examined the mark? The Moon Temple, Modron replied. I asked who. I did. And you named it a death curse? It carries cold without season. 2 granary men lost feeling in their hands when they seized her. They struck me first, Tressa said. Guard Commander Ivo Rusk looked away. Bastian's gaze moved to him. Is that true? She resisted binding. I held the storehouse key, Tressa said. They wanted it before the grain was counted. Modron turned to the king. Her family's winter rites were outlawed after the northern famine. If rival packs see hesitation, they will say the throne has lost command of winter. Bastian looked toward the nobles along the wall. Several wore Eastern pack cords. The king's choice became visible before he made it. A woman no house would defend weighed against a border waiting for weakness. Tressa understood. That did not make it smaller. Bastian stepped down until only the judgment rail separated them. Did you freeze the granary? No. Can you command frost? No. Modron's staff struck stone. Tressa held his gaze. But I can hear something beneath it. What? A promise trying to remember its words. For the first time, his control broke. Beneath the stone, a chain pulled tight, with a sound too deep for iron. Modron moved between them. She speaks in curse riddles because old fear still weakens this court. Bastian took the sentencing tablet from Ivo. Remove the throat bell. Modron's eyes sharpened. Majesty, she will not be made to announce each breath to a crowd. It was not rescue. It was the smallest dignity available inside a sentence he still allowed. Ivo cut the silver thread. The bell fell into his palm. Bastian pressed his seal into the wax. Open the den. The iron door groaned inward. Cold rolled from the chamber with the smell of old snow and extinguished fires. Moonstone walls drew warmth from skin, fur, and breath. Condemned wolves entered as men and women. By dawn, even their beasts had gone silent. Tressa passed Bastian without bowing. His voice followed, low enough that only she heard. If there is a promise beneath the frost, do not answer it. She stopped. Why? Because my blood has spent 20 years making sure it stays buried. The guards shut the door between them. Tressa moved along the wall with both hands. Scratches covered the moonstone. Names, prayers, final counts. Near the back, she found the hollow where prisoners had curled before her. She sat inside it and pulled her knees to her chest. The wrist bells sounded with each shiver. Once, twice, then slower. She remembered royal riders taking her family's last heat stones. Her brothers had returned from the border with white lashes and no anger left to speak. They had not died of a curse. They had died keeping something the throne had taught the kingdom to forget. Tressa pressed her palm to the floor. Cold answered cold. She did not command winter. She heard where promises had been frozen inside it. Beneath the moonstone, something vast drew breath. A line of pale fire opened beneath her hand, warm enough to hurt after so much numbness. It traveled through the den in an ancient circle. Symbols rose under the snow-packed floor wolves facing outward, their bodies forming a shield around a kneeling woman. The bells stopped. Not because Tressa had stopped breathing. The den no longer needed to count her breaths. It had begun counting the oath. Outside, bolts slammed back. The guards had heard silence and believed her dead. The door opened a hand's width. White light flooded the gap. A wolf stood between Tressa and the entrance. It was larger than any living pack beast, its fur bright as untouched snow, its eyes silver beneath a crown of frost. No tracks marked the floor behind it. The wolf lowered itself beside Tressa and wrapped its body around hers. Warmth struck the den. Silver oath fire climbed the walls. Ivo reached through the doorway and was thrown backward without a burn upon his skin. The white wolf did not attack. It simply made the threshold impossible to cross. Modron stared past the guards, all color gone from her face. Bastian stood beyond them, his gaze fixed on the pale fire beneath the wolf's paws. The white wolf lowered its head over Tressa's failing breath. It did not wake for innocence. It woke for an oath broken under cold, heat-tithe, and Haleward blood. Then it looked directly at Alpha King Bastian Morcant. A single line burned through the snow den wall beneath the ancient seal of his house. Morcant blood shall keep the winter heat tithe in the southern granaries. The silver fire stopped there. The rest of the oath remained buried. Bastian stared at his own house seal beneath the words. Modron tightened both hands around her staff. Tressa lifted her head from the white wolf's fur. "The grain did not freeze from my curse," she said. It froze where someone removed the warmth. Outside the den, the heat ledger bell began to ring. The white wolf had not saved Tressa from the snow den. It had answered the oath the snow den was built to bury. Silver fire remained along the threshold, bright but motionless. The wolf lay around Tressa without baring its teeth. When Ivo Rusk stepped forward again, the fire rose between his boot and the stone. It did not burn him. It simply refused him passage. High Priestess Modron Kest lifted her white staff. An outlawed guardian beast has manifested inside a royal execution chamber. No clearer proof of corruption could be given. Tressa's cheek rested against the wolf's warm shoulder. Her hands still shook from the cold. "It woke for the oath," she said. "Not for me." Modron turned toward the watching pack. Cursed blood always claims that its consequences belong to older laws. Tressa looked at the line burning beneath the Morcant seal. "Morcant blood shall keep the winter heat tithe in the southern granaries." The words had stopped after that. The oath had opened only far enough to show what duty had been broken. Bastian descended to the den entrance. The white wolf raised its head. The king stopped outside the silver boundary. His wolf did not answer the creature. No growl moved beneath his ribs. Only the old silence remained, heavier now, that the wall had named his house. "Is that seal genuine?" he asked. Modron's reply came too quickly. It belonged to a pre-famine covenant. Those protections were voided when the northern packs began raiding heat stores. Bastian kept his eyes on the stone. "Voided by whom?" "The Winter Council, under your grandfather." "Then there will be a revocation record. There are thousands of famine decrees. Bring the one that cancelled this oath." Modron's fingers tightened around the staff. "The den is unstable. The woman should be removed under temple restraint before more forbidden writing appears." Tressa lifted herself from the wolf's side. She refused to speak from the floor. "The den is not writing for me. It is counting what your law removed." Modron's gaze sharpened. "You do not understand winter law. I understand storehouse measures. You swept grain floors. I kept the southern key." Tressa reached beneath the torn edge of her shift and removed a thin iron tally. Each heatstone leaves a mark when it passes the southern gate. 7 stones entered before the frost. 4 remained when the grain failed. A steward in the yard shifted his stance. Modron looked toward him. "Master Pell, you inspected that storehouse." The steward bowed without raising his eyes. "After the freezing, were there 4 stones?" "There were 4 in the wall cradles." "And the other 3? The temple order stated they had been transferred to the Eastern Watch. Tressa held the tally toward Bastian. The gate did not record an Eastern transfer. Bastian did not take it. The white wolf watched his hand, and he seemed unwilling to reach across a boundary his blood had already violated. "Where is the heat-tide ledger?" Tressa asked. Modron answered. "Sealed for winter security. Then the oath can remain awake while you protect the seal." The silver fire climbed one line higher along the wall. A second phrase appeared, incomplete. Warmth given south shall not be taken. The fire stopped. Outside, several nobles stepped away from the entrance. Bastian looked at Modron. Open the ledger. Majesty. The eastern packs are present. Publicizing heat routes tells every rival where Frosthollow is weakest. The grain has already frozen, and opening protected records will not unfreeze it. No, Tressa said. But it may show who wanted the loss blamed on me. Modron turned toward Bastian. This is how forbidden rites spread. First a sign, then a demand. Then the throne submits to an old bloodline because fear makes disobedience look like guilt. You advised the sentence, Bastian said. I upheld winter law. You examined her mark. Yes. You inspected the granary. My temple did. And now you refuse the ledger connecting all three. Modron's expression changed only at the mouth. I refuse spectacle. Tressa looked toward the white wolf. It had not moved closer to Modron. It had not judged her. Its body remained curved around the place where Tressa's breath had nearly ended. The wolf will not carry the ledger here, Tressa said. It will not tell you who stole the stones. That work belongs to the living. Bastian looked at Ivo. Bring the southern heat ledger. Ivo hesitated. The temple vault requires 2 seals. You have mine. The second is the high priestess's. Modron could refuse, but refusal now had a shape. It stood on the wall beneath the Morcant seal. She lifted her staff and struck its iron foot against the stair. Bring it. 2 temple wardens returned with a long cedar book bound in white hide. Chains crossed its covers. Bastian pressed his ring into the royal clasp. Modron touched her staff to the temple lock. The chains opened. Ivo placed the ledger on the judgment rail. Bastian turned the pages himself. Tressa watched his face rather than the book. Then he stopped. 3 heat stones, he said. Master Pell swallowed. Removed 2 nights before the grain froze. Destination? The steward leaned over the page. There is no Eastern Watch entry, Modron said. Then the receiving clerk failed to record it. Tressa stepped as close to the threshold as the white wolf allowed. Read the authorization line. Bastian's jaw tightened. The page carried an emergency removal order. 3 heat stones had been taken from the southern granary during a night of falling temperatures. No replacement had been scheduled. Below the order sat Modron Kest's temple seal. The yard went silent. Modron did not confess. She looked at the eastern nobles instead. The stones were moved under a border preservation directive. Without them, the eastern watchfires would have failed. Then why is there no receipt? Bastian asked. Because the route was classified. Tressa studied the lower edge of the order. There is another mark beneath hers. Bastian turned the page toward the torchlight. A dark impression appeared under the temple wax, pressed so deeply that its edges had cut the parchment. The emergency winter mark of Alpha King Bastian Morcant. He stared at it. Tressa did not ask whether he remembered signing. His silence answered first. The white wolf rose. Not toward Tressa. Toward the king's mark. Bastian had condemned Tressa for the cold his own mark had allowed into the grain. The oath had named the missing warmth. The king's mark had named the hand that made its removal lawful. The white wolf stood before the open ledger without crossing the threshold. Its silver eyes remained on the dark impression beneath Modron's seal. It did not growl or advance. The judgment yard had begun to fear its stillness more than an attack. High Priestess Modron Kest recovered first. The emergency mark proves royal necessity, she said. Nothing more. Heat stones are moved during winter threats without ordinary receipt. Tressa kept one hand against the snow den wall. The cold no longer entered her bones, but the unfinished oath beneath the stone remained like a sentence. Wait, when was the order marked? She asked. Modron looked at her. The date is written. I asked whether it was marked before or after the granary was inspected. Master Pell lowered his gaze. Bastian turned the ledger toward the nearest torch. The emergency impression had been pressed over a blank authorization space. The removal date was written above it in temple ink. The inspection date appeared 2 lines below. The mark came first, he said. Modron's staff remained steady. Because the eastern watchfires were failing before the southern loss was discovered. The southern loss was created by the removal, Tressa said. You cannot know that. I know the temperature record. 4 stones could not hold that storehouse through a 3-night fall. Bastian looked toward Master Pell. Is she correct? 7 stones were required under full winter measure. Then why was the storehouse inspected only after 3 had been taken? The temple instructed us to inspect for curse contamination. Tressa looked at Modron. After your order left it too cold to preserve the grain. Modron did not deny the sequence. The kingdom had 2 threatened sites. I preserved the border. Then show where the stones arrived. Bastian closed the heat ledger. Bring the emergency authorization register. Modron stepped toward him. Majesty, that register contained sealed troop routes. So did the order used to condemn her. The pack cannot hold winter court before a cursed den and expect secure law to remain intact. Bastian looked at Ivo Rusk. Bring the register and the Eastern receiving book. The waiting changed the yard. No one watched Tressa as though she might freeze the air now. They watched the royal seal in Bastian's hand. A king's mark did not need to steal warmth. It only needed to make the theft lawful. Tressa's knees weakened. The white wolf shifted just enough for its shoulder to remain beneath her palm. It was not comfort. It was structure. Ivo returned with 2 iron-bound books. The first bore the Morcant crest. The second carried the Eastern watch seal. Bastian opened the authorization register. Rows of winter orders filled the pages. Each entry showed when a request was submitted, who presented it, and the authority under which it was validated. He found the Southern Order. Presented by the Moon Temple, he read. Validated before midnight inspection. Who presented it? Tressa asked. The name had been scraped from the vellum, Modron said. Security protocol protects temple messengers. Security protocol does not erase ink. Bastian ran his thumb over the cut fibers. Who held this register? The winter clerk. Bring him. Ivo did not move. The clerk died 2 months ago, he said. His heart failed during morning prayer. Modron's face showed prepared sorrow. Tressa listened beneath the words, not for confession or magic, but for where the buried oath tightened. Cold moved through the snow den floor when Modron spoke of prayer, then turned beneath the western stones. Tressa looked toward the winter chapel beyond the yard. The oath does not follow the eastern road. Modron's gaze sharpened. Do not turn instinct into evidence. I am not. Open the receiving record. Bastian broke the eastern seal. The book listed every delivery entering the watch fort. Coal bricks, salt meat, lamp oil, arrowwood, 2 sick horses, 1 injured guard. No heat stones. He turned another page. Nothing. Classified supplies are recorded separately, Modron said. Where? Tressa asked. In the commander's private inventory, Ivo answered. The Eastern commander sent that inventory yesterday. No heat stones were listed. I, 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 I. The omission may be his. Then send a rider, Bastian said. The pass is closed. Send a wolf. The storm. Send Mina. Silence followed. For 3 winters, Bastian's wolf had not answered him. He had given an order the entire yard knew he could not fulfill. Tressa looked at him. He did not look away. His authority had created the cold he punished. Now even his own wolf refused to carry proof through it. Bastian turned back to the books. Where is the route ledger? Master Pell pointed toward the temple wardens. Heat movements are copied into the chapel route book. Modron raised her staff across their path. The chapel routes are consecrated. Winter law named me cursed because ledger law would have named someone powerful, Tressa said. Several southern stewards lifted their heads. Bastian stopped before Modron. Lower the staff. If I open chapel routes before eastern nobles, every sacred reserve becomes vulnerable. You said the stones went east, then the route will defend you. Calculation passed across Modron's face. She lowered the staff. The chapel route book was brought beneath white cloth. Tressa did not touch it. Bastian opened it on the snow. The southern entry appeared beneath a black security line. 3 heat stones had left the granary by the North Court passage. At the eastern fork, no road seal had been applied. The route turned west, toward the Moon Temple. Master Pell leaned closer. They never crossed the eastern gate. Bastian followed the line to its final entry. Destination sealed under security need. Beneath it was his emergency winter mark, impressed before any destination had been written. Bastian had not sent the stones west. He had signed a mark wide enough for Modron to send them anywhere. Beside the closed route stood the receiving seal of a vault beneath Modron Kest's own winter chapel. The stones had not been moved to save the border. They had been feeding whatever Modron kept beneath the chapel. The route had ended beneath Modron's chapel, but the oath beneath the snow den had not gone silent. Its cold traveled through the judgment yard in a narrow line, passing under the western wall and disappearing beneath the white steps of the moon temple. Tressa felt it through the soles of her feet. High Priestess Modron Kest gathered the route book beneath its cloth. "The chapel vault is not a storehouse," she said. "It is a sacred containment chamber. Nothing beneath it can be exposed before an unpurified court." "The 3 stones belong to the southern granary," Bastian replied. "They were reassigned under winter necessity, to a destination you concealed beneath my blank authority. To a chamber that has protected your bloodline longer than you have worn its crown." Bastian's face hardened. "Open it." Modron looked toward the eastern nobles. "If the containment fails, every person in this yard may die before the guards can shift." Tressa pressed her palm against the snow den wall. The unfinished oath pulled westward again. Not words. Pressure. Something beneath the chapel had been fastened to the same promise that warmed the den. "The heat stones are feeding it," she said. Modron turned. "You have never entered the winter chapel. I do not need to see warmth to hear where it has been buried." The white wolf remained behind Tressa at the den threshold. It did not approach Modron or the chapel. Its body filled the entrance, guarding the line of silver fire where the broken oath had awakened. When Ivo stepped toward Tressa with a cloak, the wolf raised its head. Tressa looked at him. "Put it on the ground." Ivo obeyed. She crossed the threshold herself and lifted the cloak around her shoulders. The oath fire did not stop her. It rose only when 2 temple guards moved to take her arms. Bastian saw it. "She walks unbound." Modron's mouth tightened. "She remains condemned. She remains the only person here who heard the oath before we found the theft. That does not make her safe." "No," Tressa said. "It makes your secrecy less safe." They crossed the yard toward the chapel. The white wolf stayed behind. It was not her companion. It had answered one condition, and now guarded the place where that condition remained unfinished. The winter chapel held no congregation benches. Its circular floor was carved with old wolf laws, each one cut through and overwritten by newer temple doctrine. At the center stood a white altar without candles. Modron placed her staff into a narrow opening beside it. Bastian pressed his royal ring into a second lock. Nothing moved. "The vault requires the bloodline vow," Modron said. "What vow?" "The one every Morcant king speaks at coronation." Bastian's eyes narrowed. "No such vow was given to me." Modron looked almost sorrowful. "Your father removed it from the public rite." Tressa felt the oath beneath the floor pull tight. A vow removed from ceremony is not a vow ended. Modron ignored her. "Place your hand on the altar." Bastian did. The white stone darkened beneath his palm. A shape appeared within it. A wolf surrounded by a broken ring. Tressa's skin burned below her collarbone. She pulled the cloak aside. The same broken ring mark shone pale against her skin. Bastian looked from the altar to Tressa. Modron's voice remained controlled. "Her family copied royal symbols for forbidden rites." "No," Tressa said. The cold beneath the floor shifted toward her mark. "My family carried the other side of the oath." The altar opened before Modron could answer. Stone segments withdrew into the floor, revealing steps descending around a column of black ice. Heat rose from below, not the clean warmth of a hearth. A smothered, breathless heat forced to burn without flame. They descended. 3 heat stones rested in iron cradles around the chamber. Each glowed deep red, their surfaces cut with the southern granary measure. Master Pell touched one marking. "These are ours." Modron stepped between him and the nearest cradle. "They belong to Frosthollow. They were tithed to keep southern grain alive," Tressa said. "They were required here." "For what?" Modron moved her staff toward the center. A black frost chain circled the chamber column. It passed through all 3 heatstone cradles before climbing toward an ancient slab carved with the Morcant wolf crest. The chain did not end at the slab. It entered it. Bastian approached. The moment he crossed the inner circle, the chain tightened. His breath stopped. One hand closed over his ribs where Tressa had seen pain seize him in the judgment yard. A sound moved beneath the stone. Low. Animal. Furious. For the first time in 3 winters, something answered inside the Alpha King. Bastian staggered but remained standing. What have you bound here? Modron did not step back. Not what? Whom? The black frost spread across the carved wolf's muzzle. Your royal wolf began resisting the winter rites 3 years ago. It tore through your sleep. It refused the coronation commands. It tried to lead you south during the first grain shortage. I was told it was becoming feral. It was. Tressa placed her hand near the chain without touching it. The buried oath struck through her palm like a second pulse. No. It was following the broken promise. Modron looked at her with open contempt now. A beast cannot interpret covenant law. A guardian can. Bastian looked toward the 3 burning stones. My wolf has been silent because this chain holds it. This chain prevents it from becoming winter mad. Modron said. Without containment, the Morcant beast would turn against the crown, the court, and perhaps the entire royal line. And the stones? They sustain the binding. Public heat tithe sustains it, Tressa said. Modron had not stolen warmth like a thief. She had buried it like a priestess, beneath law, ritual, and the fear of what would happen if anyone demanded it back. Bastian stared at the chain entering his family crest. My mark funded this. Your mark protected the realm. My mark emptied a granary. To keep your wolf from killing you. Tressa listened deeper. The chain carried more than restraint. Each link held a fragment of the old Morcant oath, broken and frozen into obedience. The same broken ring marked every 7th link, and each time the chain tightened, the pale mark below her collarbone answered. Bastian saw it. What happens if the stones are returned south? Modron's grip shifted on her staff. The binding weakens. The grain may be saved, Tressa said, if it has not frozen beyond recovery. And his wolf? Modron looked directly at Bastian. It may return. The chamber gave a violent shudder. One of the heat stones cracked inside its cradle. Warmth rushed through the floor toward the southern wards. At the same moment, black frost climbed Bastian's wrist. His shadow stretched across the vault wall, no longer shaped like a man. Modron's next words were almost lost beneath the chain. Remove the stones, and your wolf may wake not as your servant, Majesty, but as the oath's punishment. The first crack in the heat stone did not free Bastian's wolf. It freed its hunger. Black frost raced from his wrist to his shoulder. The shadow behind him widened across the vault wall, ears rising where no human shape should have carried them. Ivo reached for his sword. Do not, Tressa said. Bastian's voice came through clenched teeth. He may need to. No. Steel will give the chain another enemy to pull against. Modron lifted her staff. The containment must be reinforced before the beast completes its return. With what? Tressa asked. Another southern storehouse? With whatever preserves the throne. The second heat stone flared. Bastian dropped to one knee. The sound that left him was not a man's cry. It was a wolf's breath dragged through iron. Tressa crossed the inner circle. The black frost reached for her boots and stopped at the broken ring mark beneath her collarbone. The chain did not strike her. It recognized the shape it had been built to divide. She knelt beside Bastian without touching him. Can you hear me? Yes. Can your wolf? His eyes had changed. Silver had entered the dark around his pupils. Yes. Does it want to kill you? Bastian looked toward the Morcant crest. No. Modron's grip tightened. Tressa kept her voice level. What does it want? He swallowed against the pressure in his throat. South. The answer moved through the chamber like a verdict. Modron struck the floor with her staff. White runes ignited around the chain. The royal beast is fixated on forbidden Haleward routes. That is the madness I contained. No, Tressa said. It is following the duty your temple cut out of the crown. The chain snapped tight. Bastian's body arched. His hand struck the stone, claws breaking through the tips of his fingers before withdrawing again. Tressa reached for his wrist. He pulled back. You do not know what it will do through me. I know what your law already did through you. The word stopped him. She took his wrist. Cold entered her palm, then divided. One current belonged to the chain, the other moved beneath it. Older, warmer, furious but disciplined. Not madness. A command denied too long. Images did not come. The oath did not show her the past. It gave her only pressure and direction. Southward duty. Guarded warmth. A crown that had turned protection into possession. Tressa looked at the 3 cradles. The stones cannot be removed together. Modron said, they cannot be removed at all. If all 3 leave, the chain breaks before the oath can take its proper shape. Bastian forced himself upright. And if one leaves, the binding weakens. The buried vow may begin correcting itself. May? I hear promises, not outcomes. He looked at her hand around his wrist. You could let it kill me. I could. The honesty passed between them without softness. But then Modron keeps the vault. The South keeps the cold. And your death becomes another excuse to bury the records. Bastian's breathing steadied enough for him to stand. What do you need? The original coronation vow, Modron answered. It no longer exists. Tressa looked toward the carved slab. Then why does the chain carry it? Every 7th link bore the broken ring. Between those links, smaller marks had been packed with black frost. She moved to the nearest one. Heat the link, not the stone. Master Pell frowned. With what? Tressa pointed to the cracked cradle. Turn its face inward. Modron stepped in front of him. No one alters sacred containment. Bastian's voice dropped. Move. For the first time, Modron hesitated before obeying him. Master Pell rotated the first cradle. Red light struck the nearest chain link. The black frost hissed away. Words emerged from the metal. Morcant blood shall guard the warmth entrusted to the South. The chamber went still. Tressa looked at Bastian. Your wolf was not crowned to command winter. It was sworn to guard what others needed to survive it. Modron said. Old wording cannot govern a kingdom after famine. Then show the lawful amendment, Bastian replied. There was no time for ceremony when packs were starving. A buried oath does not become void because obedience became inconvenient. The wolf shadow behind him lowered its head. Not to Tressa, to the revealed words. The second link began to warm. A new line surfaced. Haleward blood shall witness the keeping and name the breach. Tressa's hand tightened around the chain. Her family had not been royal. They had been harder to erase than royalty. Witnesses the crown required in order to prove it had kept faith. Modron's face lost its color. Bastian saw it. You knew. I knew the Halewards were attached to the old winter rites. You knew they were witnesses. I knew their claim would divide the realm. Their claim was to count whether children froze. Their claim placed unelected blood above the throne. No, Tressa said. It placed a witness beside it. The first heat stone cracked again. A pulse of warmth left the vault and traveled beneath the floor toward the southern granaries. Far above them, a bell rang once. Master Pell looked toward the stairs. Storehouse temperature rise. The chain loosened around the Morcant crest. Bastian's shadow grew larger. This time, the wolf shape did not strain toward the court. It turned south. Modron stepped backward. If the witness clause wakes fully, the throne cannot issue a winter order without Haleward assent. Tressa looked at her. So that is what you buried. I buried a divided command structure that would have killed Frosthollow during war. You buried the only bloodline allowed to say the crown had taken too much. Bastian looked toward the second heatstone. Turn it. Modron raised her staff. No. White fire struck the floor between him and the cradle. Evo drew his sword, but Bastian lifted one clawed hand. Hold. Modron's eyes filled with something colder than fear. If you release the next link, the oath will not only restore your wolf, it will judge whether Morcant blood still deserves to carry the crown. Bastian looked at Tressa. She did not promise him safety. She turned the second cradle herself. Red light crossed the chain. The next line appeared. When Morcant blood takes winter heat for crown survival, Haleward blood shall name the debt before the pack. A hidden compartment opened beneath the crest. Inside lay a roll of blackened winter cloth bound with 13 silver names. Tressa recognized the first. Her father. The last name had been added 3 winters ago. Bastian Morcant. The 13 names did not record the dead. They recorded winters the crown had survived by making someone else carry the cost. Tressa unbound the silver cord from the blackened cloth. The fabric opened across her palms without flame or spectacle. Each name had been stitched beside a season, a district, and a quantity of heat removed under royal necessity. Her father's entry was the oldest. Southern Hearth Reserve surrendered. Border wolves preserved. Debt unwitnessed. Below it came mill keepers, grain wardens, 2 healers, and a widow who had given the temple every heat stone in her village, after being promised repayment in spring. No repayment had been written. Bastian stood beside Tressa, one hand still marked by black frost. "Read mine," Modron said. "Majesty, the cloth is a ritual accusation. It was never intended for public judgment. That is not what I asked." Tressa found the final silver stitching. Bastian Morcant. 3rd winter of rain. Southern Heat Authority surrendered to sacred containment. Wolf silence accepted in place of public debt. The words tightened the chain. Bastian's shadow struck the vault wall, vast and wolf-shaped, but he did not move. "What does that mean?" Ivo asked. Tressa listened through her palm. The oath gave no memory. It gave structure. The debt was not paid, she said. It was redirected. "To the wolf?" Master Pell asked. "To the binding." Modron lifted her chin. The king's wolf was becoming uncontrollable. The temple converted a dangerous breach into a stable restraint. "With southern heat," Tressa said. "With the only resource strong enough to hold royal blood." Bastian looked at Modron. "And wolf silence accepted?" "You consented to treatment. I consented to sleep medicine after 3 nights without rest. You consented to temple intervention. I did not consent to surrendering my wolf." Modron's expression did not soften. "Your wolf tried to tear open the southern gates during a ration winter. Had I not acted, rival packs would have seen their alpha king driven by a beast no court could command." Tressa turned toward him. "Did it attack anyone?" "No." "Did it disobey you?" "Yes." "What did it refuse?" Bastian stared at the revealed oath lines. It refused an order to keep the Southern Reserve sealed. The chamber held the answer before anyone spoke it. His wolf had not turned against the crown. It had turned toward the duty the crown had abandoned. Tressa looked down at the cloth. The temple called obedience to the old oath madness. Modron's staff struck the stone. "A wolf that obeys dead law over its living king is dangerous. A king who can silence every witness to his law is more dangerous," Tressa said. The black frost on Bastian's wrist cracked. Pain crossed his face, quickly controlled. Tressa reached for him, then stopped before touching his skin. He noticed. "I will not ask you to steady me." "Good. I will ask what happens if the dead is witnessed." She looked at the 13 names. "Witnessing names the breach. It does not repair it." "What repairs it?" "The warmth must return to those from whom it was taken. The authority that enabled the taking must be limited. And the crown must accept a living witness beside winter command." Modron gave a quiet, humorless breath. "There it is. Haleward blood beside the throne." "Not above it," Tressa said. "Not beneath it. Beside it, where the theft can be named before it becomes law." Bastian's gaze remained on her. "You would hold that authority?" "My family died because the crown punished them for holding it." That was not an answer. "No. I would not accept authority from a king who still has the power to bury it when it becomes inconvenient." The words landed without cruelty. Bastian did not defend himself. Then what would make it real? A public oath. Independent keepers. Records no temple can seal alone. And no winter order validated by a blank mark. Ivo looked toward Modron. The priestess's face had gone still. Bastian saw it too. "How many blank marks remain in temple custody?" "None." Tressa heard the oath tighten beneath the lie. "Not enough to prove it. Enough to know where to look." She folded the cloth once. "This list names 13 debts. Where are the matching authorizations?" "Destroyed after settlement," Modron said. "No settlement is written. Not every repayment is recorded in ritual cloth. Then bring the treasury returns. The vault is not an audit chamber." "No," Bastian said. "It is evidence." Modron faced him fully. "You stand inside the only mechanism preventing your wolf from taking control of your body. And you speak as though a grain ledger matters more than survival." Bastian's voice lowered. It mattered enough to condemn her. The second heat stone pulsed. Warmth moved south again. Above them, another storehouse bell answered. Then a deeper sound rose from beneath the Morcant slab. A heartbeat. Not Bastian's. The black frost chain loosened by one link. His shadow stepped away from his feet. It did not look at Maudrin. It moved behind Tressa and lowered its head over the 13 names. Every lamp in the vault bent toward the cloth. Silver fire ran through the stitching until one hidden line appeared beneath Bastian's entry. Debt-bearer living. Witness required before the next full moon. Tressa looked at the date. 3 nights remained. Maudrin's restraint finally broke. If the dead is witnessed while his wolf is unbound, the crown will not survive the judgment. Bastian looked at the wolf shadow behind Tressa. Then the crown will answer before it asks to survive. The shadow lifted one clawed hand and pointed toward the sealed chapel stair. A second lock waited behind the altar stone. On its face was the Haleward mark, and from the other side came the sound of someone breathing. Tressa did not wait for the hidden prisoner to call again. She crossed the vault before Maudrin could raise her staff and pressed her palm against the Haleward mark behind the altar. The broken ring scar below her collarbone burned in answer. The lock did not open. It measured her. Cold passed through her hand, searching for the shape of the old witness vow. Tressa heard no words. Only a question held inside the metal. Would Haleward blood name the breach even when Morcant blood stood beside it? She looked at Bastian. His shadow still carried the shape of the wolf that had stepped away from him. Black frost covered one wrist. He had not asked her to protect his throne from what waited beyond the door. Tressa turned back to the lock. Yes, the altar split. A narrow chamber opened behind it, warmed by neither hearth nor heat stone. A single lamp burned inside a cage of white iron. Beneath it sat the winter clerk Maudrin had declared dead 2 months earlier. He was thinner than the man Tressa remembered from the Judgment Hall records. Frost scars covered his fingers. A silver restraint circled his throat, holding his voice inside him. Ledgers surrounded him. Not sacred texts. Authorization copies. Evo entered first and cut the chain securing the clerk's ankle. The man recoiled when Maudrin appeared at the opening. Bastian saw it. You said his heart failed during morning prayer. Maudrin remained outside the chamber. His public life ended. His work did not. You imprisoned a royal clerk beneath your altar. I contained a security breach. The clerk tried to speak. The silver restraint tightened against his throat. Tressa knelt before him. Do not force it. She studied the ring. Temple script had been etched into the inner rim. Not a gag. An oath of silence made physical. What did he witness? Bastian asked. Maudrin answered. Restricted routes, royal infirmity, and the instability of your wolf. The clerk shook his head. Tressa placed 2 fingers against the silver ring. The buried oath moved faintly through it, bent into a command it had never been meant to carry. This was made from witness metal. Maudrin's expression hardened. The temple has always held authority over oath instruments. You turned an instrument for preserving testimony into one that prevents it. The distinction becomes less useful during war. Tressa looked at the clerk. Can you write? He nodded. Ivo found a charcoal stick beside the ledgers. The clerk took it with damaged fingers and wrote across the floor. Blank marks remain. Bastian's gaze moved to Maudrin. How many? The clerk wrote a number. 9. Maudrin stepped into the chamber. Unassigned emergency permissions are normal during severe winter conditions. A king cannot be awakened for every supply movement. Bastian's voice remained controlled. Were they impressed before the destination was written? Yes, Tressa said. That is what made them useful. Maudrin looked at her. You are interpreting a frightened man's accusation. The clerk dragged another ledger toward Tressa. Inside were copies of the 9 blank authorizations. Each carried Bastian's emergency winter mark at the bottom. Above it, the destination spaces remained empty. 7 had later been completed. 2 had not. The completed orders named grain seizures, temple transfers, closed district gates, and the southern heat stones. Everyone had been justified after the royal mark made refusal unlawful. A king's authority had been pressed into parchment first. Necessity had been written afterward. Bastian turned each page himself. I gave the temple 3 emergency marks. Maudrin said, You renewed temple authority each winter. I renewed the same 3. Then your record keepers failed to distinguish replacement marks from active ones. The clerk struck the floor with the charcoal. He wrote one word. Copied. Ivo stared at the pages. A royal mark cannot be copied. Not with ordinary wax, Tressa said. She touched the white iron lamp cage. It carried the same black frost as the chain holding Bastian's wolf. Modron had not duplicated his seal by carving it. She had taken impressions from the binding each time royal blood fed the chain. Bastian understood. You used my wolf to reproduce my authority. I used what the crown placed under temple care. My father placed the binding here. You renewed it by accepting treatment. I accepted medicine. You accepted survival. Bastian closed the ledger. Those are not the same consent. The wolf shadow behind Tressa lifted its head. Modron did not retreat. Without the binding, you would have opened the southern reserves during a border siege. Packs would have starved. Soldiers would have deserted. Your wolf values oath purity over political survival. It values a promise, Tressa said. A promise cannot count enemy spears. No. But it can count the children whose heat you took before the enemy arrived. The winter clerk pulled at Tressa's sleeve. He pointed to the final 2 blank orders. One remained empty. The other had been prepared but not yet entered into the public register. Tressa read the first line. Subject: Surviving Haleward witness. Her fingers went cold. Bastian stepped beside her. Read the rest. Tressa did not hand him the page. She read it aloud. Upon lawful cessation of breath inside the snow den, remaining witness heat shall be transferred to Morcant containment. Broken oath to be sealed until the royal bloodline no longer requires restraint. No one moved. The snow den had not merely been chosen because condemned prisoners froze there. It had been chosen because the den could collect the final warmth of a winter oath daughter and feed it into the chain beneath the chapel. Modron had intended Tressa's death to silence the witness clause permanently. Bastian looked at the royal mark beneath the order. His authority had not only permitted the sentence, it had prepared to use her last breath. Modron's voice came quietly. If the witness line survived, the crown would remain vulnerable to a dead covenant. Her death would have ended generations of divided winter command. You call murder administrative closure, Tressa said. I call it preventing civil collapse. The clerk pushed the final blank order toward Bastian. Its destination remained unwritten, but the security purpose had already been entered. Emergency removal of the Alpha King before full moon judgment. Bastian read it once. The wolf shadow behind Tressa bared its teeth for the first time. Not at her. At the empty space where Modron had not yet written who would inherit the crown. The unwritten succession space turned the hidden order into a weapon anyone could finish. Bastian carried the page out of the clerk's chamber and placed it on the winter altar. Who was meant to complete the destination? Modron followed without haste. The emergency council. There is no council seal. There would have been after your removal. Removal to where? Somewhere your wolf could not turn the full moon judgment into a civil war. Tressa stepped from behind the altar with the copied authorizations beneath her arm. You prepared to remove him before judgment because judgment might expose the binding. Modron looked at her. I prepared for the possibility that an oath-maddened king would choose dead law over living packs. Living packs whose heat you took. Heat can be returned. A kingdom shattered by succession cannot. Bastian stared at the empty destination line. And who would rule? A winter regency. Led by the temple. Guided by the temple. Ratified by the eastern and northern alphas. Ivo Rusk moved toward the chapel doors. Modron lifted one hand. Outside, iron bolts fell into place. Temple guards had sealed the chapel. The winter clerk recoiled into the hidden chamber. Master Pell reached for the nearest heat cradle as though warmth could defend him. Bastian did not draw a weapon. How many guards obey you? Enough to prevent panic. How many know what is beneath this altar? Enough to understand that your wolf cannot be permitted to wake before the moon. The black frost chain tightened around the Morcant slab. Bastian's shadow drew nearer to his body, dragged backward by the binding. His jaw locked against the pane. Tressa listened beneath the chapel floor. The buried oath still pulled toward the snow den, but another pressure had begun to form above them. Boots crossed the judgment yard. Pack nobles were being moved away from the western wall. Temple bells rang the pattern for royal infirmity. Modron was not hiding the removal anymore. She was beginning it. Tressa placed the copied authorizations on the altar. You cannot declare the king unfit with records created through stolen marks. I can declare him endangered by his own beast. Then let the pack see the beast. Modron's expression sharpened. That is precisely what cannot happen. Bastian looked at Tressa. You understand what you are asking? No. The answer stopped him. I know only what your wolf has refused and what the chain has been fed. I do not know what it will become when released. And still you would open this before the court? I would open the evidence. Whether you open the chain is your decision. Modron struck her staff against the altar. The witness clause does not grant her authority over royal containment. Tressa touched the broken ring mark below her collarbone. No. It grants Haleward blood authority to name a winter breach before the pack. That clause has not been recognized in generations. The Snow Den recognized it. A prison wall is not a court. The Heat Ledger recognized it. The Root Ledger recognized it. Your hidden clerk recognized it. Modron turned toward Bastian. This is what divided command creates. A storehouse keeper now speaks as though she can place covenant above the crown. Bastian picked up the removal order. She is not placing it above the crown. He tore the blank destination line from the page. She is placing a witness where my house removed one. The chain beneath the altar pulled hard. Bastian staggered. Black frost climbed his throat. Ivo caught his shoulder. But Bastian shoved him back before the wolf inside him could mistake restraint for attack. Modron lifted her staff toward the Morcant slab. Reinforce the binding. The 3 heat stones flared. Warmth drained downward. Far beyond the chapel, the southern bells began to fail. One stopped. Then a second. Tressa heard what the others could not. The unfinished oath beneath the snow den weakened each time the vault took another measure of heat. Every moment you hold him, she said. The chain is taking more from the south. It is temporary. So was every winter before this one. Modron's eyes went to the sealed chapel doors. The Eastern Alphas will not follow a king who admits his authority was copied from a chained wolf. Then they should hear it before they swear to whoever you choose next. You mistake exposure for justice, and you mistake secrecy for stability. A fist struck the chapel doors from outside. Then another. Ivo looked toward Bastian. The royal guard? No, Tressa said. The sound came lower, from the yard stones. The snow den oath fire had reached the chapel foundations. Silver lines appeared between the floor carvings. Not bursting upward. Not attacking. They traced the old laws Modron's temple had cut through. One line reached the altar. Witness shall stand before winter command. The chapel bolts lifted by themselves. Not because magic had judged Modron. Because the original building had been constructed to prevent a winter court from being sealed against its witness. The doors opened. The judgment yard stood beyond them. Pack nobles, southern stewards, temple guards, condemned families, and royal soldiers filled the snow. At the far end, the white wolf remained before the snow den boundary. It did not move toward the chapel. It had guarded the oath long enough for the living to bring the evidence into daylight. Modron stepped onto the chapel stairs. Alpha King Bastian Morcant is under sacred containment until the full moon passes. His wolf has breached royal control. For the safety of Frosthollow, winter authority transfers temporarily to the Temple Council. The Eastern nobles began speaking at once. Some demanded proof. Others demanded Bastian be bound before his wolf surfaced. Tressa walked past Modron and placed the copied orders on the judgment rail. Then let the temporary authority begin by reading what it prepared in secret. She laid out the order for her death. Then the order for Bastian's removal. Then the 9 copied royal marks. The winter clerk emerged behind her, alive before the court that had been told he was dead. Modron did not retreat. His testimony was compromised by access to forbidden material. The clerk lifted his scarred hands. Tressa placed charcoal between his fingers. He wrote across the snow den sentencing tablet. The king's mark was copied from the wolf binding. The Eastern Alphas fell silent. Bastian stepped into the yard. Black frost covered half his neck. His wolf shadow moved separately beneath his feet. He could still have claimed illness. He could still have allowed Modron to call the records counterfeit and preserve the throne until the crisis passed. Instead, he removed the Morcant crown. My authority made these orders lawful, he said. My ignorance did not make them clean. Modron stared at him. If you surrender winter command now, the packs will tear Frosthollow apart before dawn. I am not surrendering it to you. He placed the crown on the judgment rail beside Tressa's death order. I am suspending every emergency mark issued under my reign until public witness reviews it. The Northern Alpha drew his sword. That leaves the border without royal command. No, Tressa said. It leaves command without a blank permission to steal. Bastian looked toward the chapel vault. 3 nights remained before the full moon. The chain was already failing. If the oath requires judgment, he said, it will have me before the pack, not beneath an altar. Modron's voice dropped. Then you may not survive it. Bastian looked at Tressa. She did not promise that he would. The wolf shadow rose behind him until its head stood above the chapel roof. And for the first time, the entire kingdom saw what its temple had been feeding in the dark. The first blade drawn in the judgment yard was aimed at Bastian. The Northern Alpha held it across his body. Not yet attacking, but no longer recognizing the man before him as unquestioned king. Bind the beast before it crosses the chapel steps. Ivo Rusk moved between them. Bastian raised one black frosted hand. No blood in this yard. The wolf shadow behind him shifted without following the command. Its shoulders rose above the temple doors, immense and silent, while the human shape beneath it remained still. Modron Kess descended the chapel steps. You see now why sacred containment was necessary. The Morcant wolf has separated from royal judgment. Under winter law, command passes to the temple until the beast is restrained. Tressa stood beside the judgment rail, one hand resting on the copied authorizations. Winter law written before or after you copied his mark? Modron did not look at her. Remove the condemned witness from the royal circle. No guard moved. The winter clerk remained behind Tressa, charcoal still staining his scarred fingers. Southern stewards had gathered around him. They had spent too many winters obeying sealed orders to mistake another one for truth merely because a priestess spoke it aloud. The Eastern Alpha pointed toward Bastian's shadow. Can he control it? Bastian answered himself. No. The admission moved through the yard more sharply than denial would have. Can it control you? The Alpha asked. Not yet. Modron lifted her staff. Then every moment of delay risks the kingdom. Tressa looked toward the 3 southern bells beyond the wall. Only one still sounded. The others had gone silent as the chapel binding consumed their heat. The kingdom is already paying for your restraint. The south will be restored after containment. That promise has been made every winter. Bastian turned toward the chapel vault. Bring out the heat stones. Modron's voice hardened. They cannot cross the inner threshold while your wolf is manifest. They crossed it when you stole them. They were transferred by lawful authority. My authority. Yes. And now I withdraw it. You cannot withdraw a completed emergency order because its cost has become visible. Tressa looked at Bastian. A king's mark made the taking lawful. It cannot make the warmth belong here. The wolf shadow lowered its muzzle over him. Black frost reached his jaw. Modron's expression changed. Not fear. Readiness. She had expected this stage. There remains one lawful containment method, she said. The snow den collected enough witness heat before the guardian interrupted the sentence. If Tressa Haleward returns to the chamber and completes the condemned rite, the binding can be restored without further southern loss. The yard went quiet. Tressa understood the order hidden behind the words. Her death had failed as execution. Modron now offered it as medicine. Bastian stepped between Tressa and the snow den. No. Modron looked almost weary. You would risk every pack for one woman whose bloodline was designed to absorb winter debt? Her bloodline was designed to witness it. And witnesses have always carried cost. Not this one. The words were not romantic. They were political. Bastian had refused the mechanism that preserved his crown. The Northern Alpha lowered his sword a fraction. Modron saw the change and struck her staff against the chapel stone. The black frost chain beneath the altar answered. Bastian's body folded. The wolf shadow slammed into him from behind. Bones shifted beneath his coat. Claws tore through his hands. His breath struck the snow in silver bursts. Ivo reached for him. Tressa caught the commander's sleeve. Do not touch him. He is shifting. The chain is forcing him to fight himself. Modron raised the staff again. Return to the den, Tressa. Complete the transfer and he remains king. Tressa looked at Bastian. His face was half human, half wolf. Pain had stripped authority from it, but not choice. He shook his head once. No den. Tressa turned toward the southern stewards. Bring the heat stones into the yard. Modron's temple guards closed around the chapel. The royal guards moved opposite them. For one breath, Frosthollow stood divided by steel. Tressa lifted the blackened winter cloth bearing the 13 names. No weapons. Read them. Master Pell understood first. He took the cloth and spoke the oldest debt aloud. Southern Hearth Reserve surrendered. Border Wolves preserved. Debt unwitnessed. A laundry keeper read the second. A grain widow read the third. The names moved through the yard, not as magic, but as public record. Each debt was heard by someone whose district had carried winter without repayment. The silver lines beneath the snow brightened. Modron called over them. Old losses do not govern present survival. Tressa faced her. Then why did you need them hidden? The 7th name was read. The white wolf remained at the snow den boundary. It did not join the court. It did not defend Tressa from Modron. It guarded the place where witness death had been made into royal fuel. The 9th name was read. The chapel doors opened behind the temple guards. The winter clerk had found the inner release. Master Pell and 2 southern keepers rolled the first heatstone into the yard. Its iron cradle cut a dark path through the snow. The single remaining southern bell rang twice. Modron stepped before the stone. If that warmth leaves the binding, the Morcant wolf will complete its return. Bastian forced one word through changing teeth. Move. She stared at him. You will lose the crown. Then let the oath decide what remains. Modron struck the cradle with her staff. The heat stone split. Warmth surged across the yard. The southern bells answered together. Bastian's human shape disappeared inside black frost. A royal wolf tore through it. He was larger than any living alpha beast. His coat black beneath silver ice. His eyes carrying neither madness nor recognition. Nobles fell back. Guards raised spears. Tressa did not move toward him. She did not call him by name. She placed the 13 debts beside the broken heatstone and spoke the witness clause. Morcant blood took winter warmth for crown survival. Haleward blood names the debt before the pack. The black wolf turned. Not toward Tressa. Toward the crown resting on the judgment rail. He crossed the yard while every weapon followed him. Then he closed his jaws around the golden band. The crown cracked. Inside its hollow rim lay 9 thin plates of black oath metal, each stamped with the emergency winter mark, the source from which Modron had copied royal authority. The wolf dropped the broken crown before the living clerk. Modron's staff slipped against the stone. Bastian's wolf had not returned to defend the throne. It had returned to expose what the throne had carried. The final hidden plate fell from the crown and opened in the snow. Its inscription named the coming full moon judgment. If Morcant blood refuses the witness and preserves the crown, the royal wolf shall devour the oath. If Morcant blood accepts the witness and restores the debt, the oath shall judge whether the crown may remain. 3 nights remained, and the wolf standing before Tressa had not yet decided whether Bastian would survive them. The broken crown could no longer command the royal wolf back into a man. For 3 days, Bastian remained in the old guard court. No chain held him. No temple circle surrounded him. He slept beside the shattered crown while soldiers watched from beyond the oath line Tressa had drawn in the snow. The line did not imprison him. It marked where Morcant power ended until judgment. Tressa spent those days returning the 3 heatstones. The first went to the southern granary. The second went to the infirmary hearths. The third was divided among schools and common kitchens according to the ledgers. The frozen grain did not become whole again. Some sacks were lost. Families still counted what the court had taken. Restoration did not erase cost. It named who must carry it next. At moonrise on the 3rd night, Frosthollow gathered in the judgment yard. Modron Kest arrived without her white staff. The temple council had removed it pending inquiry, but she still wore the winter priestess's mantle. You cannot hold a lawful oath judgment without a crowned alpha, she said. Tressa stood before the snow den with the blackened cloth of 13 debts across her arms. The oath was older than the crown, and therefore unsuited to govern the kingdom it became. Then argue that before the pack. The royal wolf entered the yard alone. The broken ring mark glowed over his chest where the chain had held him. He stopped before Tressa but did not bow. The white wolf remained inside the snow den boundary. It had awakened the oath. The living would decide whether to keep it. Tressa placed the 13 names on the judgment rail. Bastian Morcant, your bloodline took winter heat assigned to southern protection. Your authority was used to seize warmth, bind a royal wolf, imprison a clerk, and prepare the death of a living witness. The black wolf's ears lowered. You did not order every act. You signed power wide enough for others to perform them without your knowledge. Modron stepped forward. No king can inspect every route or question every sacred office. If ignorance is treated as guilt, no throne can function. Tressa looked at her. Ignorance is not the whole guilt. Building a law that rewards ignorance is. The winter clerk placed the copied authorizations beside the broken crown. Master Pell added the heat ledger. Ivo added Tressa's sentencing tablet. Bastian's wolf looked at each record. Then his body began to change. The shift was slow and brutal, but no chain pulled against it. Bone returned beneath skin. Claws shortened. Black frost fell from his shoulders. When Bastian stood as a man again, he wore no crown. He faced the pack. My mark made theft lawful. My distance made cruelty ordinary. My throne profited from both. Modron's voice cut across the yard. If you dissolve the powers that protected Frosthollow, the next famine will kill more than this one. Then those powers must be rebuilt where one priestess and one king cannot hide the cost. You would weaken the crown because a storehouse keeper demands oversight. Bastian turned toward Tressa. No. I would limit the crown because it proved willing to kill the person who could name its breach. Silver oath lines appeared beneath the snow one by one. Morcant blood shall guard the warmth entrusted to the south. Haleward blood shall witness the keeping and name the breach. When crown survival requires public sacrifice, the debt shall be declared before the pack. The final line remained dark. Modron understood before the others. The oath still requires crown judgment. Tressa nodded. It does. If it rejects him, the eastern packs will challenge succession before dawn. That is possible. If it accepts him, you place Haleward blood beside royal command forever. No. Not Haleward blood alone. She turned toward the southern keepers, healers, school stewards, and storehouse workers. The witness seat will not pass privately through my family again. Frosthollow will choose winter keepers from every district. I will preserve the old measure until that council is established, but no bloodline will own the right to speak. Modron's composure fractured. You would give common keepers authority to halt royal winter orders? Yes. They will hesitate during war. Then the king must persuade those who pay the cost. Modron faced Bastian. Every rival alpha will call you ruled by servants. Bastian looked at the shattered crown. Then they may learn the difference between service and obedience. He stepped inside the oath circle. The final line ignited. Let Morcant blood keep the crown only while it permits the witness to stand beyond its command. The judgment did not kneel to him. It placed a boundary around him. Bastian picked up the broken crown and set it on the rail. I accept. The royal wolf returned behind his eyes, not silent, not separate, and not mastered. The white wolf rose inside the snow den, looked once toward the restored oath lines, then dissolved into pale winter fire. It left no tracks and no promise of return. Modron was not executed. Her temple authority was stripped, and she was ordered to answer publicly for each sealed transfer, copied mark, and hidden prisoner. She continued to argue that she had preserved the kingdom. Tressa required every argument to be entered beside the cost it imposed. By spring, the snow den was no longer an execution chamber. Its moonstone walls became the public winter archive. The bells once used to count dying breaths were hung above the southern storehouses. They rang whenever heat was removed under emergency order. Bastian attended the first winter council without a throne. Tressa sat across from him, not beside him. After the final ledger closed, he found her beneath the melting eaves. My wolf recognized you before I understood the oath, he said. It recognized the witness. Yes, that is not the same as choosing me. No. He waited until she looked at him. I do not ask you to make it the same. Tressa studied the man who had once given her one dignity before allowing her sentence, then surrendered the powers that made that sentence possible. Walk with me to the southern granary, she said. Under guard? Under record. A restrained smile touched his mouth. As you require. They crossed the thawing yard at the same pace. Behind them, the old execution bells rang once for every measure of warmth returned. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But no promise beneath Frosthollow would ever again be buried without a witness standing above it.